Hello, welcome back to FBN Circuit. Here are my college football predictions for 2022. First time on this channel since 2020. I'm bringing back this series. So I will record this video in two parts. The first part, which is the video you're seeing now, will just be my record projections for each of the 10 conferences, independents, and then the bowl projections. Whereas part 2 will cover a variety of different topics, from the rankings to trendy teams, overrated, underrated, on the rise, on the wane, scheduling, biggest games, coaches in the hot seat, All-Americans, Heisman Watch, and just various topics like that. But here, just for part 1, I just want to go over each team, where I think they'll finish at the end of the season. So without further ado, let's get into the American Athletic Conference. The AAC will be dominated by Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston. All three have a case to be the best team in the league coming into 2022, but there's improvement among several other teams who will give them a run for their money. Cincinnati and Houston ended 2021 as the top teams in the American Athletic Conference, and not much has changed for 2022. UCF, Memphis, and SMU won't make winning the conference an easy ride for Houston and Cincy. However, I do see both teams at double-digit wins once again. The middle of the conference is tough to predict, as East Carolina seems to be the trendy pick to finish 6th. Tulane should improve after a disappointing 2021, and Tulsa is always a reliable bowl contender. However, in my conference predictions, I have USF finishing 6th, but that's just because of tiebreakers. In the conference championship, I do see Houston besting Cincinnati and making the Cotton Bowl as a Group of 5 New Year's 6 representative. As for the big games, there are some throwbacks to the Southwest Conference days, the most notable one being TCU and SMU, and the Army-Navy game is always a great spectacle. It should also be noted that Cincinnati and Houston miss each other in the regular season. Moving on to the ACC, Clemson's reign atop the conference ended last season, and there's no guarantee that Swanee's team returns to number 1 in 2022, although I do see Clemson bouncing back and winning the ACC championship. However, they have to get past the surging Pack, who beat them for the first time in the decade last year, and the defending champs in Wake Forest. As usual, the Coastal Division is always hard to predict, with only one repeat division winner since 2013, that being the division defending champions, Pitt. Although losing some key pieces, Pitt still returns one of the league's top defenses and a solid foundation on offense. However, I see Miami, Florida, with Cristobal taking the division this year. Watch out for North Carolina as they hope to rebound from a disappointing season as well. I see the ACC sending 2 teams to the New Year's 6, Clemson and NC State in the Orange and Cotton Bowls respectively. Also, the ACC versus SEC matchups, and FSU and LSU, Miami and Tamu, and Louisville and Kentucky should be fun to watch. Clemson and Notre Dame will also have a great showing to open November, and the Coastal Division can be decided during the last week of the season when Pitt and Miami squares off in Hard Rock Stadium. Moving on to the Big Ten, the 2022 conference champions will likely come from the East Division again. Michigan looks to win the division, but they have to get past Ohio State for the second straight time as well, this time in Columbus. That's a tall ask, and I see Ohio State returning as both division and conference champs behind Stroud and a high-powered offense. Michigan State also looks to play spoiler, having bested their in-state rival for the past 2 years, and Penn State looks to return to prominence after going 11-11 throughout the past 2 seasons. In the West, Iowa won the division last season and is still in the mix, but Wisconsin and Purdue are rising. Whiskey has Allen to supplement the run game that has worked for so long, and Purdue is coming off their best season since 2003 with the most favorable schedule in the West. Minnesota should also have a claim for number 1 with optimism behind Fleck and Shiraka. Also, a bunch of eyes are on Nebraska and Frost after a lopsided 3-9 campaign, and so not having reached a bowl in over half a decade, it puts Frost in one of the hottest seats in the country. In the end, I see Ohio State taking out Purdue and Indy and going to the college football playoff, sending Michigan to the Rose Bowl. Also, with a lack of bowl allocations, Maryland goes to the Boca Raton Bowl due to a lack of bowl-eligible projected Group of 5 teams. Big Ten play starts off in Dublin and only gets better from there. In the non-conference portion of the schedules, Notre Dame and Oklahoma, 2 serious threats for the championship, builds a huge resume for Ohio State and Nebraska respectively. The Big 12, which would look very different in 2023, enters the 2022 season without a clear frontrunner. Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, and Baylor should all be favorites, but each team has question marks to address. Okie State has to get the offense back on track after averaging a mere 5.5 yards per play last season. Baylor must build a receiver unit and someone to step up in the backfield, and Oklahoma suffered from both a coaching carousel and a transfer portal. Texas has a lot of preseason hype for them after a disastrous 5-7 campaign, and Kansas State is the conference's primary dark horse. TCU should also be able to return to a bowl. The rest of the conference has potential to make the postseason if the cards play in their favor. I see Oklahoma State prevailing from the top group of 3 and being the Big 12's known representative in the New Year's Six. Texas can start the Big 12 off on the right foot with a victory over the mighty Alabama. There are also some more intriguing non-conference matchups involving Iowa State and Iowa, Oklahoma and Nebraska, and Tech and NC State. From then, it will be a race to the Big 12 championship. The Conference USA is entering a transition year this upcoming season. Marshall, Old Dominion, and Southern Miss leaves for the Sun Belt. Thus, the conference drops to 11 teams and will also run without divisions. The top 2 teams will play in the conference title game in December, and UAB and UTSA are heavy favorites to be there. However, the latter has to prove that 2021 wasn't a fluke. Western Kentucky was in the conference championship last year and finished their season with a dispatching of Appalachian State. FAU returns 12 starters from 2021 and can start racking up wins in the Conference USA again. Everyone else will be fighting for bowl appearances. The only team I see getting there is Middle Tennessee State. I see UAB defeating Western Kentucky in the conference championship game and going to the New Orleans Bowl. They even get a matchup against LSU late in the season, building their resume for a potential New Year's Six bid. That stretch from the 22nd of October to the 5th of November is crucial if UAB wants to get there. The conference can prove it's legit if it can take wins away from Texas, Miami, and Purdue in late September. Recent history suggests that the MAC will once again have plenty of drama and unpredictability in 2022. Since 2015, 11 of the 12 teams in the MAC have played for the conference title, the lone one out being Eastern Michigan, and no program has won the title back-to-back since Northern Illinois did it in 2011 and 2012. NIU is also the defending MAC champion. They can get there again if they get past Toledo, considering the bulk of their roster returns for 2022. Toledo looks to bounce back from last season, with 5 of their 6 losses being one score. Central Michigan and Western Michigan headlines the next tier. In the other division, the MAC East, Miami and Kent State are the favorites, behind considerable depth in the backfield for each team. Little separates them from Ohio and Buffalo, however, and Bowling Green is also making subtle improvements and can push for a bowl very soon. I see NIU winning the conference back-to-back for the first time in a decade, while also dropping Miami to a losing record. With the MAC title, I place NIU in the Quick Lane Bowl to face the Big Ten. Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, and Ohio State all play MAC teams in the non-conference, so maybe a team can shock the world and steal a win there. The Mountain West has a clear group of contenders going into 2022. Boise State, Air Force, Fresno State, and San Diego State are the favorites for the championship. Tough calls were made at the top of both divisions, but I think San Diego State will rise to the occasion and knock off Boise State in the championship. Repeating last year's 12-2 season will be tough, but the Aztecs should be in the thick of the race to win the West Division once again. The Broncos aren't the lock at number 1 they have been the previous seasons, but Avalos should get the program back on track after a 7-5 finish last fall. Air Force, a team that went 21-5 over the last 2 full seasons, 19 and 21, has 15 starters coming back, and they have pieces in place to make a run at the Mountain West title. Fresno State went 10-3 behind a high-powered offense that averaged 33.4 points per game last fall. Elsewhere, Utah State, Nevada, and San Jose State provide some intrigue, with Colorado State and Wyoming close behind. Just like Maryland, I have San Diego State in the bowl not advocated with the Mountain West, that bowl being the Armed Forces Bowl. Also, Alabama, Michigan, USC, Utah, and Iowa will all give the Mountain West Conference tough matchups in the non-conference, but there's potential for some teams to wreak havoc on the Power 5 teams. From now on, the Pac-12 Championship will now host the top 2 teams from the conference to have a better chance at making the college football playoff. In the North Division, Oregon is a clear favorite once again despite 2 recent unsensational seasons. While they have no real threat right now, Oregon has an opportunity to boost its win total and the Pac-12's resume if they can beat Georgia and Atlanta. The rest of the North is capable of reaching 6 wins as long as things don't go south. Speaking of the South, most eyes have been on the projected 3-team race between Utah, USC, and UCLA. Last year, Utah won its first Pac-12 title, and I'm projecting them to repeat as conference champs this year, but it won't come easy. If not for all of the transfer portal movement, Utah would have been seen as the obvious favorite to repeat as champions, but USC should be much better behind new coach Lincoln Riley. Arizona State, on the other hand, has suffered mightily in the transfer portal, and that puts Edwards' job in jeopardy. I see two teams reaching the New Year's Six in Utah and USC, the former of which being in the college football playoff. A pair of Pac-12 SEC games will headline Week 1, and Michigan State and Washington also pits two top 25 caliber teams. And as always, Notre Dame will spice up competition in this conference. SEC predictions for the 2022 college football season starts with familiar programs at the top of both divisions. Alabama and Georgia are the clear frontrunners in the conference, but a handful of other teams are looking to take them down. Some teams are entering the season with new head coaches and transfers, while other teams are looking to capitalize on the return of plenty of veterans. Georgia only returns 10 starters from 2021's national championship team, and Alabama lacks chemistry with new receivers and new position coaches. Those vulnerabilities make it possible for newer teams to step up and surprise. Tennessee and Kentucky headline Tier 2 in the East, with Tamu a clear number 2 in the West. Note that Jimbo Fisher led Texas A&M to first place in the 2022 recruiting class rankings. Tennessee's defense needs work after allowing more than 200 yards rushing and almost 34 points a game in SEC play in 2021, whereas Kentucky has question marks at receiver and the O-line. This league also has good depth towards the bottom half as well. Florida, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Arkansas, and LSU could all sneak into the top 25. Looking further down the standings, Scar, Mizzou, and Auburn should all be bowl teams, but Vanderbilt reaching 6 wins is a tall ask under Lee's second season at the helm. Again, I see everyone but Vandy making a bowl with 3 teams making the New Year's Six, 2 in the playoff, Alabama and Georgia, and Tamu representing the SEC in the Sugar Bowl. Non-conference games will set the scene early in the SEC, with Utah, Oregon, Texas, and Miami involved. Rivalry week will be fun that could decide the standings in the middle of the divisions, but in between them is Alabama and Tamu, Georgia and Florida, that's in Jacksonville by the way, and Tennessee and Kentucky. Those 3 games will headline the many games that can decide the division champions. The Sun Belt looks very different in 2022 that will work to their benefit. The additions of Marshall, Southern Miss, and Old Dominion from the Conference USA, and James Madison from the FCS Colonial bring the conference to 14 members. Marshall is one of the 3 teams poised to challenge for the East Division crown, but I see App State prevailing as division champions once again. Coastal Carolina also has a case for the title, as they've risen to the occasion in recent years. And the Dukes will push for a winning record in their first season at the FBS level. Although the league's top teams reside in the East, there's no shortage of intrigue in the West. ULL has won the West Division in all 4 seasons since their realignment in 2018, and I don't see that streak ending this year despite a significant amount of turnover on the coaching staff. Along with ULL, Troy and Arkansas State are the only other teams in the West that have won the conference title. Both can challenge ULL for that division title this year as well. Troy has a strong defense that they can lean on until their offense improves, and Arkansas State, that despite coming off their worst performance in 2 decades, they have one of the best recruiting classes in the conference in 2022 that will build on an offense that scored over 25 points a game. I see familiar faces in App State and ULL in the conference championship, with the former prevailing. James Madison's debut against Middle Tennessee State will also be interesting to keep an eye on. Also, UNC and Florida State out of the ACC will provide challenges for App State and ULL respectively in the non-conference. The world of the FBS independent college football programs will soon get a task smaller, with Liberty and New Mexico State off to join the Conference USA in 2023. Next year, Brigham Young will also leave for the Big 12. Focusing on this year, however, Liberty should once again be a thorn in the sides of several Power 5 teams. They've managed to steal wins from them before, and they can do it again this year with matchups against Wake Forest, Arkansas, and Virginia Tech. Army should also go bowling again, led by its dominant ground and pound offense. Interestingly enough, New Mexico State, Notre Dame, Connecticut, and Massachusetts all are starting 2022 with new head coaches. Notre Dame and Brigham Young will make the most noise with so many high-profile showdowns, but Army is right there with them. BYU and Notre Dame play each other in Las Vegas. Notre Dame gets some high-profile matchups in Ohio State, Clemson, and USC. Brigham Young gets Baylor and Oregon to boost their resume. And Army gets Wake Forest and the annual Army-Navy game to enjoy. Towards the bottom of the group, UMass and New Mexico State play each other, Army plays UConn and UMass, and Liberty plays UConn, UMass, and New Mexico State. Also, UConn and UMass go at it. As for postseason play, I only see 4 teams making it, and it shouldn't be a surprise as to who they are. I'm projecting Notre Dame to go to the Orange Bowl as part of the New Year's Six Bowl series, with Brigham Young, Army, and Liberty all making bowl appearances as well. So that will wrap up part 1 of my college football predictions. I know I mentioned that I would include the bowl projections as part of this video, but I didn't anticipate the video being this long in duration at this point. Stay tuned for part 2 where I will include the bowl projections, national rankings, trendy teams, a brief schedule outlook, coaches on the hot seat, All-Americans, and finally the Heisman candidates. And with that, it's been FBN Circuit. Have a good one.